plug in your cell phone to charge and your cell phone is not a mass storage device and you disconnect your cell phone, it doesn't warn you that you're going to lose any data. Right? It only beeps at you when you want it to beep at you. When you are sitting at a command prompt and you type eject whatever your USB stick is and you pull it out, it doesn't tell you that you've performed an illegal operation. If you insert a USB stick and it appears that the file system is dirty, it will prompt to run check disk on the stick. It won't just leave you with an inaccessible stick and you wondering, well, where did my files go? So here's a little bit of that.
Ah, nice.
Okay, so there's drive N. And if I come over here, oops, sorry. Here's drive N. And if I open up, I'm going to show you all about XView in a moment. But if I open this up, I go to drive N, I can right click on drive N and tell it to eject drive N. And
Ooh.
there you go.
Wow.
Okay, now it gets better. I want to reinsert drive N. N is available. I know we don't see N over here. We know about that. We're fixing it.
Ooh.
But now what I can do is I can do something like this. Right? I can do, right, there's directory of drive N. And then I can do like that. And the widget knows that I've legally dismounted the device. Now, let me show you something else that's pretty nifty. I reinsert my stick, and down here, I'm going to run another directory on it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that.
For those of us that can't see it, can you tell?
Yeah,
It says USB drive N was unplugged without being ejected. Please reattach the USB device to avoid data loss. So now anything that was cached is still cached. And now the cache was just written back out to the disk. I didn't lose any data.
Cool.
Okay?
That's nice.
Houdini here.
When I was talking to, and by the way, all of this widget work is Rich Walsh.
Oh,
Many
great.
of you may be familiar with Rich's work with drag text and
Yeah.
DMT, the desktop maintenance tool. Rich said, what can I work on first? And I said, we need a new removable device widget. And I don't want to call it a USB widget because eSATA is a hot pluggable technology. And one day we will have support for hot pluggable eSATA devices. We don't have proper support for that, just like no operating system has proper support for that. They tell you that eSATA is fully hot plug capable, and you can hot plug under Windows, you can hot plug under Linux, and lose data under both of them. But one day that's going to work properly. The widget should be intelligent enough to work with that type of connection just as easily as USB. So I said, I don't want USB part of the name. Think of this as a removable device widget. So he said, okay, we already have a removable device widget. What's wrong with the one we have? So I said, all right, let me go down the list. This is a problem. So he said, okay, let me look at it. And he comes back to me and he says, you know, you're right. How about this? And this is what we have. And the configuration is very simple right now. It's really just that.
What's that say?
It says audible alerts, so it gives you a little beep when you insert something. Yes, sir?
Could you please if you could shut that,
Yeah, maybe
Oh, very
those
good
are-
idea.
This?
Great.
yeah, that,
The maroon.
close the dark, yeah.
Dark one.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, Martin, then
Ah.
next.
Is that better?
Probably
That's
not.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They got two of them for that, just that purpose.
Yeah, yeah. So audible alerts, it'll beep if you want it to beep. It
That's
doesn't
better.
have to beep if you don't want it to beep. And run check disk if needed. So if you put in a stick that's dirty, it will run check disk for you to tell you, we need to run check disk on this media, and it'll run it. I've not tested the check disk part. I have to actually make a stick useless enough that I can damage it without losing anything, just in case. First rule of testing, try not to blow up your testing.
What about, I know this isn't a function of this, but like NTFS formatted sticks?
Any stick that you can recognize, in other words, if you have an NTFS file system driver, then yes, that would work. HBFS works the same way.
Right. Do I have an NTFS? There is an NTFS?
There is an NTFS driver. I don't know that we're going to ship the NTFS driver with Blue Line. Certainly you ship HBFS, you can have HBFS formatted sticks.
What about the net drive stuff? Does that,
Well,
not, no.
Net drive and removable.
yeah, it doesn't, I'd have to think about how that would all work together, because NetDrive doesn't actually work that way. In other words,
It has to be there already before you get mounted.
yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
NetDrive doesn't deal with hot pluggable things.
Right.
Like this. But the idea is that it's essentially file system agnostic, okay? And as I say, I can do this and eject N. Oops, sorry.
Well, you know, could be.
There we go. What? Now that's an interesting bug.
Ah, yeah. Eject twice and.
And you know what it is?
Maybe
It's
it's not
because
that.
4OS2 has a lock on.
Ah.
That's actually a 4OS2
Bring
thing.
up config sys and we'll take a look.
Well, 402's author maintainer is busy talking.
See, now it won't automatically remount it.
Okay.
That was the 4OS2 session.
Ah.
So that's a bit of the new widget. XW, what's that?
Too bad we don't know who's supporting for.
Yeah, I wish that 4OS2 had an active maintainer.
I know, it's really tough.
Who would ever do that?
The XW LAN widget is there, which you'll recognize.
Yeah. It's suppress pop-ups, and then you do it a drive for it, it's not there.
And your standard complement of widgets from X
Typically,
Workplace
those
right
things
now.
are
Could I ask that we not have
useful because
conversations?
you really usually get out of it.
Could we
I'd like to invoke a neutral party.
could we quiet the din a little bit, guys?
That it's recovering from.
Stealing. So.
If there's stuff to be discussed, could you discuss it in the meeting room or out in the thing, so that we don't have the rumble? We've got some slightly different graphics for the standard controls. We're hoping to have a new button called the Arca button, but we haven't put it together yet. We'll see if it makes it. The Arca button will essentially do what the X button does now, but it should have, instead of these things being menu choices here, these should be buttons down the left, and it should have a menu on the right side. But that's still in the planning stage. A number of things will likely not ship with ArcaOS 5.0. Some of those things will then be available as updates to ArcaOS 5.0. Some things will be deferred to ArcaOS 5.1, ArcaOS 5.2, or ArcaOS 6. And yes, we are planning that far out. So, some other programs that we have for you. some installed software. Some of these things will be installable at the time of operating system installation. 4OS2, OpenOffice will be. There's Snap Graphics, which should look fairly familiar to anyone who's already got Snap installed. None of this has really changed. This is the first alpha of the Snap builds. Screensaver will be there. This is our new DVD burner. It is based on DVD toys from Echo Software.
Yeah, they had no command line interface. They actually ruined the one in CDR tools. Is that different now, or?
What did you want to see on for the command line interface?
Right now we have something where you can call it from command line, include it in scripts, and essentially, if you have
In CDR tools.
yeah, and and this prevents CDR tools from running. So
This uses a special build of CDR tools.
yeah,
That's built using libc05.
uh-huh.
We have an open request for a rebuild based on 06.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, this installation of CDR tools, of DVD tools, does not have CDR tools installed. That's why there's no
Oh,
information here. Because we haven't settled the build of CDR tools that we're shipping.
okay.
The plan would be to have a useful build of CDR tools.
That would fix DVD toys as far as I'm concerned.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, is there a capture function in there?
A capture function as in capturing.
Capture a CD or DVD to an ISO.
Oh, can we create ISO files from this? We cannot. We can burn disk images,
I can see that.
but we cannot create ISOs with it.
Okay.
If you have a need for that functionality, then you need to purchase the DVD Toys license,
Okay.
which you can purchase from the ArcaOS store.
Okay.
See, here's the trade-off. We wanted to include basic functionality in the operating system because we believed, and we still continue to believe, that an operating system needs to be useful out of the box. You should not have to install it and then go ahead and buy 15 other things to be able to use the computer. To that end, we needed certain applications. We needed an archive tool. We needed some ability to burn disk media. But we didn't want to discourage the upgrade and purchase of commercial applications designed for this purpose. So we're left with two choices. Either we have feature-limited versions, or we have time-limited versions, which are just demos, essentially. There is absolutely nothing in ArcaOS that will require you to buy anything else. Nothing will time out. Nothing will stop working 30 days after you get it. It will work forever, as it is. If your computer lasts forever, it will continue to run forever. And all the functionality that you had from the day you installed it will continue to function.
Guaranteed no bugs, right?
That's guaranteed without possibility of breakage. So the offset then, the alternative is, what limited feature set can we add without increasing the cost of the base product so much that it becomes equivalent to buying the operating system and buying a full license for the software on top of it. Okay. So we settled on a number of features. One of the features we decided not to include was the ability to rip optical media to create ISO files. Most people need the ability to burn ISOs, not to rip them.
Right.
So we didn't include the ability to rip. We don't include audio CD manipulation. So if you want to create audio CDs,
Oh, yeah.
you need DVD toys for that.
Yeah.
But if you've got an ISO that you need to burn, you have a DVD image that you've got to burn for something, no problem. You have DVDs you want to copy, you can copy DVDs.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Louis, if you already have a license for DVD toys, can you refrain from installing
Absolutely.
that and use the license you already have?
Absolutely, absolutely. Without a doubt, there is no problem. Just like what I said about NetDrive, if you get the full version, not a problem. Not a problem whatsoever. We'll continue to work with this and just install your existing license and you're good to go. But it will have the then current build of Firefox. Right now, this is the latest that's available. And it will have the latest build of Thunderbird and the latest build of SeaMonkey. You can install one, none, or all of them as you see fit. This is the new version of Lucide. Lucide 1.4 will ship with the product. And I see that we're off to the side of the screen here. You can tell this is not an accelerated chipset. There we go. Oh, look at that. My button's aligned now because it squished the screen down. We're having some discussion about getting the help button always aligned like that.
So you're gonna have to keep your screen that way.
What's that?
You're gonna have to keep your screen now.
Yeah. You know what it is because on here it shifts from widescreen mode to 4:3. And once I shift the screen mode, it moves everything into place. This is the new version of Snap, of Lucide. And it uses the latest popular libraries, rendering libraries, same as XPDF, QPDFU. And it's got online help now. And if you have the GBM plugin for Lucide installed, it will add that help.
What's GDM?
GBM is the generalized bitmap module, and it reads a number of formats. Let me give you a quick overview of that. This one I don't have it loaded. Sorry, I just have the help file installed. But it reads, instead of the 3 formats that the JPEG library reads, it has a list that's about that long.
This is a plugin for Lucide?
Plugin for
Okay,
Lucide,
okay.
yeah, plugin for Lucide. And it's a free plugin. It's available. You can download it from Hobbs. There are instructions for installing it. And I'm going to work with the author about getting that help file that I cobbled together included in the next release of that. So when you install that plugin, it will add that help file to the list, and you'll be able to get help on the plugin as well as the application. If you have a PDF loaded and you want to see what crazy fonts are used in the document, here's a list of fonts. We can thank Greg for that because Greg did most of the work on getting Lucide where it is right now. There was something, I guess document info was the other thing. That tells us what created it. You can tell this is the original Snap manual because it was a Microsoft Word document.
Is Lucide something for which the source is available?
Absolutely. Lucide is an open source project hosted at NetLabs now. Lucide is actually, I shouldn't say it, Lucide is a dual licensed product. So you can have open source plugins in Lucide and you can have commercial plugins in Lucide. The license for Lucide itself is flexible. NetDrive I showed you yesterday, Thunderbird. That's the new network adapter utility. Now, many of you using ECS 2.2 Beta 2 have seen an earlier prototype of NAPS. NAPS is now more full-featured. It's got help in it. Well, somewhere it's got help. There we go. And you can do all sorts of neat things with NAPS. You can swap the adapter out very easily for a different network adapter and leave all of your bindings in place. It's a much more intuitive interface than the old IBM MPTS utility. And it doesn't, well, at least hopefully, doesn't munge any of your configuration files.
That does wireless stuff also, right, when possible?
It does, well, it does wireless in the sense that it will bind a protocol to the wireless adapter. In this case, when I did this install, the only adapter I enabled and configured was the Wi-Fi adapter, so that's why that was the only one that was listed. But essentially, even to MPTS, a wireless adapter and a wired adapter look exactly the same. It's just another Ethernet device. Let's see, what else can I show you? I can show you, I don't know if we're running the new hardware manager yet. I don't think so. Of course, we're running ArcaOS package manager, but I'm not going to start it because I haven't logged into the captive portal, and that's going to stall trying to access the net. Many of these other things are going to look very similar to what you're used to seeing in ECS.
But what about that thing where all those
Mini LVM.
drive letters pop up, like 10 different pop-ups? I think that happens in the LVM program. You know, with USB drive letters that are unused so far, you know. And every time you save it, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. That's part of the IBM logical volume manager utility. And yes, that will do the same thing.
Yes.
Mini LVM ships with this. We just don't have it in the folder here. But Mini LVM, I believe it's in the path.
Oh, yeah.
Mini LVM ships, and
Good.
it will probably be on in that system setup menu instead of the Java logical volume manager. Again, this is a slightly updated version of Mini LVM from what's in ECS 2.2. Yeah, well, Alex did this, and Alex did NAPS, and Alex did ArcaOS package manager.
So he's our resident VxRex guru.
Yes, yes.
Plus
And
he
the
does
nice thing about having a guy who does user interfaces as well as Alex, having that person do a number of these things is that they all have this consistency about them. They all work the way you expect them to work. Once you get used to the way things are laid out, there are no big surprises when you get to another application. And we really, really, really try to adhere to CUA 91.
You're not going to go with that cell phone interface, you know, with the.
We're definitely not going the cell phone. Not going the cell phone. We really try hard to adhere to CUA 91 standards. And we actually have discussions about things as mundane as, you're probably going to laugh when I tell you this, but things like see the ellipses after contents, keys, help. This help file this menu hasn't been updated. We took those off because those were changed. They were removed from CUA 91. You're not supposed to have ellipses after those. We actually have discussions about stuff like that.
That's good.
Because we have so much time.
Because we have so much time. But to us, it's the consistency. It's the It's the finished look and feel of the product. It really should look and feel like a professional outfit put it together, and it wasn't just cobbled together by a bunch of guys working in the basement. So the logical volume manager. Oh, come on. I know I should just click the X, I know. Styler 2, you will remember. E-Styler, you will remember. We haven't come up with a better name for ours than just Styler, but it's essentially the same tool with some of the proprietary bits pulled out and replaced. It's not quite as full-featured as we want it to be yet, but it's getting there. But you'll notice a lot of this stuff will look familiar to you. We have a number of new fonts that we added to the system. More than just these that are listed here, because there are 9 that are on the list. Again, Alex is our font guru, so he's added a bunch of
Yeah,
very
not
useful
only does he
fonts.
select them, but he designs them.
Exactly. Midori is his. You see Midori.
Yeah, and Warp Sands.
Warp Sans is his.
What are
Workplace Sans is his.
Yeah.
What are all the source ones? What is that?
They're, I don't know if I can, let me see if I can demo them. Source Code Pro, those are Adobe fonts. I think that's Adobe, not Google, that's Adobe. The font folder is from X Workplace. If you're used to X Workplace, you'll recognize that. AMOUS is shipped. I don't know if I've got AMOUS in this or yes, I have AMOUS installed in this. We'll also ship the IBM mouse driver if you prefer to use that.
Speaking of fonts, the user interface comes in what languages besides English?
We will have NLS versions of ArcaOS available. ArcaOS 5 will be English only. ArcaOS 5.1 will probably ship in English, German, Dutch, French, Spanish.
Western European languages.
Yeah, I think double byte character set will probably come sometime after that.
So like Japanese would, for example?
What's that?
So you get a certain amount of push per double byte.
Yeah.
Internally.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Alex again.
Exactly. We'll
Yeah,
see.
but that's
It's on the
interesting.
map. Yeah, it's definitely on the map. We just realized that we need a functional product. So we
Yeah,
might as
sure.
well stick with English for 5.0.
Right.
We realize it's important to come out with NLS, and that is on the. it's in
And
the
I'm just
plan.
curious, in order to do that, do you need to find someone who's a Japanese speaker and to help you implement that, or is it already kind of in there somewhere and you just need to let it loose? Or
The OS2 portions, because remember, ArcaOS 5 is based on MCP 4.5.2, right?
Right.
So MCP 2, which is OS2 4.52. So OS2 messages are already translated. We have the NLS versions of that stuff. But there are other portions of the code that don't come from IBM, and those need to be translated so that they work and they don't revert to English.
And what was the world of languages that were available? Were like South Indian languages available, for example?
I don't remember.
really know
Steve, do you remember?
About 12, but there were, I think, the only real DBCS was, I think, simplified Chinese and Japanese. And the rest were, mostly the European language.
Arabic, like Arabic? Was there an Arabic OS2?
I think there was an Arabic and I think there was a Hebrew, but I don't really know when
No?
they stopped
No.
with the fixed packs on that.
He's shaking his head no back there.
Right.
I don't think so.
Never a Hebrew? I could have sworn that Moral said he was using the Hebrew, but maybe just for some apps.
Now, on
Maybe,
top of
yeah,
that,
maybe
on
just
top
for
of that,
some
you'd
apps.
have to go implement that in all your applications you're adding.
Otherwise, they'll revert to English.
Yeah.
At least with a single byte character set, they'll revert to English. I don't know, because there are boot file differences for double byte character set support.
And not
And-
just boot files, it's kernel files too.
I don't know what happens if you don't have a double byte character set message file and you're booted for double byte character set. Does it fall back to English or can it not? I don't think it can.
Well, no, it could, but the thing is, I've never really looked, I don't have access to any of that stuff to really look at.
Mm.
You know, I can make guesses on what it does.
Huh.
But you know,
the thing is,
the,
don't forget, it's more than just the character. Don't forget, you need the IME.
Mhm.
And the IME is language dependent.
Right.
Hmm.
The interesting thing to remember is that we actually have people working on this stuff. We had a problem with Yum handling double byte character sets. What was the biggest holdup with fixing that? No one working on that stuff had access to a double byte character set setup. So we provided one. We provided one, problem solved. We got the bug fixed. This all came about when we were developing ArcaOS Package Manager. The issue came up, well, you know, we have to figure out a workaround because we get a crash when we try to run on a Japanese system.
And how does OS2 work? Can you, like this installation, could you flip it to Spanish, for example, without, can you just do that, or do you have to
I would need to
install a
have
new
the
OS2?
Spanish language files installed, and then I would tell it to change my locale to Spanish.
And then at least the, well, whatever observes that would then work. Okay.
Yeah.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than that, because the thing you have is, where there's external message files, yeah, you just change them. And the same thing with you'll see a bunch of DLLs that have MRI in the name.
Uh-huh.
Those are your machine readable information, and that's where you have your language info, not just resources. But there are some applications which are the messages and stuff like that are compiled into the code. Now,
Well,
That
of
becomes
course,
a little
we
more
can
difficult.
replace that
Yes.
stuff,
of course.
but
of course.
it's not just drop a file in place.
But I'm
it's
just curious about
tedious.
OS2 itself, you know.
OS2 itself, if you have the language files installed, as far as I know, you should be able, if you have just a Warp 4 system, you want to change the language. If you've got the other language files installed,
Yeah, but you're also talking executables, and I'm not just talking to DLLs.
yeah, it's not just messages.
No, I
It's not
understand
just
all those
messages.
issues, but I was just curious in general how it's set up.
There's more code that's got to go onto the disk.
Yeah.
That's the point.
And also, a lot of this stuff is documented internally only. There's a little, to really get a full switch over, it takes a little bit.
Mhm.
Okay.
Now, we also, like DVD tools, include an application to handle archives. I just don't know where I put it. There we
Okay.
go. And it is based on Echo Software Zippy. It doesn't do as full a range of archives as Zippy handles. It doesn't, I don't remember whether we do encrypted archives. I think we can decrypt archives, we can't create encrypted
Yeah, we
archives.
can read them, but we
Right.
left out some of the creation options.
Right.
Basically, you can read, I think, almost any reasonable archive format that you're gonna come across, 7Z.
Yeah, it supports a number of formats. Not as many as Zippy supports, but Zip, Jar, XBI, ODT, XZ, TAR, GZIP, 7-zip.
And if it's 2-in-1, does it figure that out?
The important thing is.
As in tar.gz?
Exactly.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It does.
But the important thing is if you come across a zip file that, has a document in it you need, you're gonna be able to extract it. If you are gonna bypass RPM Yum and unzip to install something, you'll be able to do it. Now, if you want the fancy stuff, then, you just get the fancier version. And not only that, there are both common, for zip handling, there are commercial and open source versions that'll get the job done, no trouble.
Are there workplace shell-based archive things like, like on Windows where you can just click on the folder and it opens?
You mean
Like?
Integration to the
like,
Well, first, the answer is yes, but it's not necessarily a workplace shell class, because it's easy enough to make that happen.
well, I mean, what you can do here is you can open it or extract it.
Well, what really, don't forget, when you say workplace shell, okay, is it a program object that is associated with an extension?
No.
Or
I
is it
mean,
a
no,
WP?
You wanna- what
in
you're
Windows,
saying-
a zip file looks like a folder
Like
and
a
you can
folder.
just open it. That kind of thing.
We don't have that
Nope.
enabled, we don't have that configured. It's certainly possible to do.
Uh-huh.
The question is whether we do that with, whether we add that, that class to the desktop, or we do it with some other method.
That would be terrible, because my wife gets nervous finger, and she'd have the whole desktop open. And then she'd say, why is all this stuff open? Did you click on
asked
it?
it to.
Yeah, click, click, click.
So
I
this
thought I had
is,
to click twice.
let me show you this before we, before I reboot and show you the preboot menu. So right now I have my drives object configured to open in X view by default. X view is the old split view from X Workplace. And it gives you a 2-panel display, and you can do some very interesting things. You can see you've got columns that you can add or subtract in the different views, and then you can apply the settings you have here to all folders by clicking there, or you can customize different drives or directories to show up with different views. If you have a folder that's got a background, you can let it show the background, or you can make it revert to white so it's less distracting. Otherwise, you'll get the background on the left side, you won't get the background on the right side. And of course, you can expand things, and you can open things from here. It essentially becomes a mini file manager, which is very handy. We include a new file open container. Which, again, if you're used to Ecom Station 2.2 Beta 2, you've seen an earlier version of this. This one actually has most of the bugs worked out of it so far. I still think we need a help file because of all of the buttons that we have at the top, but essentially you can sort and remember your history of files that you've opened. It's a little more helpful than the default Warp 4 or MCP file open container. That ships by default with and is installed by default with the operating system. There are other things that will be included that are not in the alpha build yet. Anyone here familiar with, yes, Greg, what were you gonna say?
The split view. Have
Yeah.
you solved the problem where if you do a split view of a network drive on one computer, you then can't open it on the computer that it's supposed to be on unless it has split view?
I haven't seen that bug.
The early split views did that.
I'll have to see if I can replicate it, or,
I can try to replicate it, I still have the computer pass.
okay, if you can replicate it, send me some details,
Okay.
and I'll get them over to Rich. Anyone here familiar with Piano Launchpad from Echo Software? It's a launcher for the bottom of the screen, much like the Warp 3 thing, but much more up to date, much more flexible. We will include a version of that, most likely. We haven't seen the code of the recent changes to it, so we haven't made a final decision, but that's in the plan for those people who prefer to have a Launchpad, some undocked bar on the bottom of the screen. Our own preference would be for a bar that can be docked to the bottom, to the side, anywhere you'd like it docked. I mentioned the archiver, I mentioned DVD tools, that PNG icons. When we start getting these higher resolution displays, OS2's icons become problematic because they were never designed for displays at resolutions like we have. Dynamic icons will swap those default OS2 icons for PNG icons. And you may be familiar with Echo Software's Sunny Icons product. This is based on Sunny Icons, updated and enhanced for ArcaOS. And of course, if you have PNG icons, what do you need? You need a way to edit PNG icons. So we have someone working on an icon editor to replace the default IBM icon editor that will handle PNG and ICO files.
A question. The
Yeah.
installation process for your DVD installation.
Yeah.
Since version 2 all the way to ECOM 2.1, it seems to have remained pretty well almost the same. Are you going to modify that to some degree? Or
The installer?
the install, yes.
The installer is completely rewritten.
Okay.
And one of the reasons that we had to push back our general availability date is that we're not done with it yet. So right now, all the alpha builds, including this one that's on here, are completely manual installs. So we have a series of scripts that we need to run manually in order to shoehorn the operating system onto the machine.
And one of the big problems, I guess, over the years was been my internet driver for the card. It's a very short list, and mine was never on there. And I end up somehow doing it by hand. Even though I put the driver in the driver subdirectory, I'd go back and look, it never saw it. So back to the drawing board and edit config sys by hand.
The plug and play capability should be greatly enhanced from what you're used to seeing. Let me show you what this looks like in the pre-boot menu, and then you'll see kind of what the installer should see. Again, this is all alpha software, so there's still some refining to do and what have you, but you get a pretty good idea. Much of this stuff hasn't changed in quite a while. So this is the main pre-boot screen, and you can see you've got the option to install display driver, mouse driver, whether you need ACPI, your disk controllers, CD-ROM, and there's the wired Ethernet. Now, honestly, that's not the best choice yet, but that will change. But the point is that we do detect the network card that's in there, and right now, that's the match that we're using. That will change. This will be much better by the time we get to GA. We can also edit the adapter parameters. So after you exit here, this will. Let me back up for a minute and explain a little bit more about pre-boot.
but this is definitely different than what we've done in past installs.
Yeah. The pre-boot environment is not just for booting the machine into the installer. We will ship a usable rescue and recovery environment on the DVD. So if you have a system that's broken, you can't get it to boot up for whatever reason, you should be able to take your DVD, put it in your drive, boot the machine to a usable maintenance desktop with a light browser on it so you can get to the web, full internet connectivity so that you can get to the web, to get the information and the utilities and the software that you need to fix your machine. So as a result, we need to be able to enable the network at this stage of the process. The Ecom Station installer doesn't enable your network when it starts the install. It installs the software later so that your network is enabled once the machine boots into OS2 from there, or Ecom Station from there. We give you networking out of the box when you boot up from this point. If you have parameters to change, for instance, when I set this machine in motion, I didn't configure the wired interface at all. I configured the Wi-Fi only as the interface. So as a result, I needed to configure the network SSID for the wireless network so I could connect and get on, because I don't have a utility to like XWLAN available to me yet. So under edit adapter parameters, once I exit this, I don't know that I may lose my display. That's why I'm not actually going to that point of the install, but it pauses the boot cycle and allows me to enter those parameters that I need to have available. And then escape from that and then use those parameters when it enables the card so I can get connected. Likewise, even if I've got a wire adapter, there may be some parameter that needs to be set. That gives me the opportunity to set it up. If I'm using static IP instead of dynamic IP, I can enter all of that right here in the pre-boot menu.
You would need to know the SSID.
I would need to know the SSID.
And
There is not a utility to scan for
It doesn't give you the list. Yeah,
hotspots.
Okay. And then what
not
about
really,
user ID password? It also allows you to put that in if there's a
if there
security.
is a password, if there is encryption, I think that we have that availability for that information.
We actually do have an app that will scan for SSID, we just haven't integrated it yet in this.
Correct.
That'd be cool.
And also, this may change depending on how far we get how close we actually get the wireless drivers of our own rather than GenMac.
I mean, in 2007, those of you who were or have been on the OS2 wireless users mailing list may recall that I proposed a replacement to GenMac at the time, and it caused a huge hullabaloo. How dare I say such a thing? But the problem is that, as I said then, GenMac is unsupportable going forward. We don't have the source code for it in a usable state, and it's just not a great approach. A much better approach is the multi-Mac approach, with support for wireless drivers, and then we can drop new wireless drivers in and spin up a new multi-Mac for current cards.
Up there where you're specifying your card, network card,
Mhm.
could you specify both wired and wireless?
I can only enable one card for the pre-boot environment.
Okay, right.
And essentially the reasoning is we don't anticipate that you're going to be connecting to multiple networks during the time of your install or when you have to repair your system. Multiple simultaneous network connections would be useful for server conditions where you're routing traffic between them. This is really for installation and emergencies.
You don't need to get to your refrigerator while you're doing it.
Exactly. And then, of course, the standard, what language would you like sort of stuff.
as long as it's in.
Exactly. Any language you want as long as it's English. Oops. One second. And right now, what will happen is if I boot this up, go back to the Intel that was on here. That's a better match for this card. And I press F10 and I boot. Now normally what would happen is I would boot from this point into the graphical installer by default, unless I tell it I want to boot into the maintenance environment.
There's a question, well, a different kind of question until it boots.
Mhm.
Says, did ArcaOS find a way besides using OS4 loader or QH unit loader to solve the memory cap problem?
I'm going to talk
see
about the
more
loader
than-
in
Okay.
30 seconds.
Okay.
I promise. And because I know there are a lot of questions surrounding the loader. Just let this boot up to a blank desktop for a moment.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
What is the native file system you gonna use?
JFS. JFS. You will have the option to use HPFS if you have a reason to use HPFS. There are certain SCSI adapters that require HPFS. They won't boot off of JFS. And until we address those situations, we have the availability of using HPFS. Honestly, though, the problem with HPFS, and I've had to answer this question on more than one occasion. HPFS is a great file system. I have absolutely no complaints about HPFS, except that HPFS is limited to 64 gigabytes. I can't have a partition larger than,
Functionally, you really can't go beyond 32.
Yeah, okay. Today, how useful is that? That's a USB stick for us today,
Yeah.
okay? So what are my other HPFS options? My other HPFS option is HPFS 386, which was IBM's server-based HPFS. Great file system. Hasn't been updated since 1995, but it's a great great file system, okay? We have no license to distribute HPFS 386. Why don't we have a license to distribute HPFS 386?
Because they even find the code.
Who owns HPFS 386? Microsoft owns HPFS 386. So for every license of HPFS 386, which IBM sells, Microsoft is due royalties. So
That's how they're staying in business, right?
I guess if I went to our IBM rep and I said, look, I need 1,000 licenses for HPFS 386, IBM would probably sell me 1,000 licenses for HPFS
Well, they
386.
managed to do it for OS2. Why wouldn't they do it for HPFS?
There you go.
386?
There you go. Let's face it, money talks. The problem is, what about when that customer then comes back to me and says, hey, you sold me 1,000 licenses for HPFS 386 and I've got a problem.
They all don't work.
I can't fix it. I have no source code access. And IBM hasn't touched that code in, 2 decades,
21 years.
right? What am I supposed to do with it? So JFS right now is our answer. Ideally, if you were to say to me, what would my choice of file system be for ArcaOS in 2020? It would probably be ZFS.
Maybe. We really don't know what's coming along.
Okay,
Now,
so
today, yes, the answer is yes.
if I had to choose from the file systems available today, my choice would be ZFS. It supports extended attributes of unlimited size. It has, for our purposes, no volume size limit, and it's extremely robust, and it's easily read by most modern Linux distributions.
It does
So-
snapshotting.
What's that?
It does snapshotting.
Yes, exactly. We can do snapshots with it. It is superior to BTRFS, ButterFS. And it is, I hate to say it, it is superior to JFS in a number of respects. That being said, we have a working bootable JFS driver that is supported. It's distributed by ArcaOS, and it gets the job done. And there's so many other pieces for us to deal with that the fact that we have a working file system, we're happy that we have a working file system, and we'll revisit the file system question down the road at some point. So yes, we support HPFS, we support JFS during installation. We are hoping to have an updated FAT32 driver available, not for installation of the operating system. You don't want to install OS2 on FAT32. All right, that's bad. All right, it's like crossing the streams. Right? Don't want to do that. But we're hoping to have a more robust FAT32 file system driver.
For interchange. For interchange.
For interchange, exactly. It's amazing how many things are using exFAT these days, EXFAT. As I said yesterday, because of Microsoft's patents on exFAT, we will not be distributing an exFAT driver. It would be great if some other private developer came out with an exFAT file system driver or even an exFAT plugin for NetDrive. And that would be absolutely terrific. And you could install it with ArcaOS Package Manager and access all of your digital camera media that way. USB sticks, because there are USB sticks that are coming formatted exFAT. But it's not going to come from us. It's not going to come from us. We are, one of the things when we founded the company that we set down as one of our commandments is, thou shalt not play around with licensing. Life is too short to get sued, particularly by a company with much deeper pockets than we have.
Yeah.
That's why you're not using Trump FS, right?
Now.
No political discussion.
No political discussion.
That wasn't political. That was legal.
That was.
You may all take your knives
So-
out on Wednesday and it's appropriate, yeah.
When he's done.
The question came up about, let me hang on
Whether
a
it's
second.
yourself or the other guy, you know, I mean, it's.
The question came up about loaders. Let's talk about loaders for a minute.
Yes.
We are fully aware of the fact that there are a number of systems that will not run properly without an updated loader, because using OS2 loader, the IBM loader, we can't see more than 512 megabytes of memory. We are fully aware of that problem. QS Init does have code in it to resolve that problem. We will not be shipping QS Init in ArcaOS, period. We will have,
What's QS in it?
that's a replacement loader for OS2 LDR.
Wow.
We will have a replacement loader which will have a subset of functionality of QS Init in it.
No games.
That subset of functionality will include the above 512 fix. It will include the ability to create a RAM disk above 4 gigabytes of memory, so that's rudimentary PAE support, programmable address extension support. And in the absence of a configuration file defining those features, it will revert to working just like the IBM loader. So it is a very modest change from the tried and true and fully backward compatible IBM loader that we have now. Remember, the OS2 mantra is it must run your existing applications. We really, really, really do not take chances about installing anything that might not run existing code. We don't want to break anything. So therefore, enhancements need to be done incrementally. The first step is, we know we've got a problem that must be addressed. The 512 megabyte problem's got to be addressed, because more and more hardware is requiring that we get around that problem. The second issue is, you've got a machine, it's got 8 gigs of RAM in it, it's got 16 gigs of RAM in it, you've got 4 other operating systems on it, including 3 of which are 64-bit Linux installations. We know that OS2 is a 32-bit operating system. It's not going to see more than 4 gigabytes of memory. So you're going to boot it up and you're just going to have all this wasted headroom that's there doing nothing for you. Let's make it do something useful. If we have the ability to turn it into a RAM disk, off we go. So we want to make the system useful. We want to make the system useful, address known problems, and not break anything. So that's why we settle on a very, very slim modification for now. Now, we'll likely enhance that loader over time. But right now, that's all we want to do with it. And we will not distribute QS in it through ArcaOS, nor will it be part of ArcaOS. We have a very good relationship with the developer of QS in it. Don't get me wrong. We have a great relationship with Dixie. Great guy. And our loader will be based in part on the work done for QS in it. But it will be a completely separate piece of code, completely separate code base. That answer the question online, do you think?
Let me check. Did you fork the project? Or clone it?
How am I doing for time? I'm over time. 5 minutes over time.
Oh, shoot.
Are there any other questions online in the room?
Well,
Can you give us what you would consider basic hardware requirements for ArcaOS? I mean, what is the minimum disk you would put on? What is the minimum memory, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, let's start with what David outlined yesterday. Quality hardware that's not exotic,
Right.
and it's
Right.
not the cheapest thing on the market.
Right.
Okay? Minimum memory requirements, my gut would tell me that considering the cost of memory today, 4 gigabytes of memory is not an unreasonable request. Can you run it in 2? Absolutely. Would I recommend that you run it in 2? No, I'd recommend that you run it in 4.
You wouldn't notice it. You can run in 1.
It depends, it all depends upon what you're doing.
My virtual,
Yeah, if you're running a server.
my virtual
these guys
2.2s are running in 1.
It all depends upon what you're running. If you said to me, knowing what I know today about the cost of components, if I were to build out a system, what would I consider a minimum system for ArcaOS?
Yeah.
I would say 4 gigabytes of memory. I would say business quality video, business quality audio, because we should be able to support both of those with UniAud and with at least Panorama, if not Snap, when Snap is updated.
Means accelerated 2D, you don't give a damn about 3.
You
That's
know,
what business is.
3D, I really.
No, that's what business is. That's the difference between the business and the gamers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And frankly, if you're going to be playing games, you're not going to be playing games on OS2. Galactic Civilizations is a great game. It's fabulous, but.
Solitaire might be an exception.
And by the way, speaking of games and included software, Daniel Velotte, you're familiar with the French developer Daniel Velotte? Daniel has agreed to let us install all of his OS2 games and utilities in ArcaOS. They will be shipping with ArcaOS.
Chess, you're still gonna have chess?
We're definitely going to have chess.
Mahjong?
Mahjong we're going to have. She's and Show we're going to have.
There's a problem with chess. It occasionally makes illegal moves.
It cheats.
Imagine
that.
One guy I know, when he was really going, and about the 3rd day he was going, wait a minute. How did I do that?
There will be some other third-party applications. Let me just make a quick mention about my good friend who's passed on this, earlier this year and left us, Dave Seville. Anyone here use ClipView, the multiple clipboard application? That's sort of like Dave's warhorse. Dave passed away, cancer, earlier this year. I've been in touch with his wife, Zena, and she's agreed to let us collect the source code for Dave's software, and we will be including some of that stuff in ArcaOS. This year's Warp Stock is dedicated to Dave Seville. I'm sorry, I get a little choked up about this. But great guy, great software. Our plan for ArcaOS is not to include anything that we would not be proud to put our name on. Only quality code. Usually that means we need to have the developer on hand. In the case of Dave's stuff, I'm very confident not to have Dave on hand and include his stuff because it's that good. So that's a great way to end my presentation on ArcaOS. Yes?
Hard drive?
Hard drive. Size hard drive? Under 2 terabytes.
Okay. All
All
right.
right?
The smallest you can buy out of the store these days.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I would,
Solid state drive would be very handy because they're getting cheaper and cheaper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Almost everything I've
if
got.
you're going to get a solid state drive, you want a solid state drive that emulates a mechanical drive.
Accesses that you do to it.
Like I have one of those little skinny ones in one of my motherboards that's that NVD or something, I forget, it's a Samsung thing. Is that one that doesn't fall in that category?
Those ones that catch on fire?
You know what I'm
not
talking
sure
about?
that, I know which one you're talking about. I'm honestly not sure, David. We need to.
Because I think it's a
check the
different
specs.
thing than SATA.
Would you go like half terabyte? I mean, 512.
Yeah, that's fine.
terabyte's
The
great.
disk space requirements, again, like anything else, it depends on what you're putting on. It's like what Alex was talking about earlier, when you're deciding on the size of your Unix root volume, how much space you want to have. It really depends on how much stuff you're going to install on it.
Are you putting a lot of movies or editing video? If the answer is no, don't worry. Because that's what's eating up all the space. I mean,
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
not the operating system.
Yeah.
Right, I
Right,
mean,
right.
so you put MP3s on there, you'll be dead by the time it plays everything that's on your.
So, yeah,
Everyone got a head
the
start.
thing to remember is that right now, we have a 2 terabyte
What
limit
is next?
No.
on those
Oh, no.
drives.
You're-
So,
you're-
What?
You're right.
if you get a drive that's more than 2
What?
terabytes,
You're
you're only going to see 2 terabytes.
Okay.
So don't waste the money. Future plans, we do plan to support GPT, which will allow us to use those gargantuan drives. I mean, if you want to put 6 terabytes on one spindle, if you want to sink your life savings in a boat, knock yourself out. I'm a RAID guy myself. I would rather have half a dozen spindles and each one of a sane size, so that if one dies, I just pop in another one and all the data just replicates.
Yeah, plus it keeps us warm in the winter.
It does. It keeps it very warm. You should feel my computer room. It's quite
And also
toasty.
remember that 2 terabytes happens to be binary, and they always spec them as digital, so it's actually not 2 as they say.
That's
It's
true.
2 point, I forget, it's a.
I don't remember.
moderate
It's
amount.
based on 1024.
When they tell you how
Yeah.
big a drive is, it's
Yeah.
decimal, because that's what marketing does,
Right.
okay? But the actual limitation, okay, is the power of 2, okay? And it's, 2 to the 32nd times 2 to the 9th?
Oh,
Yeah,
you
to the-
math types. God.
Anyway, the point is, if you put that into your little calculator, you find out that, it's 4 or something like 2.4.
Yeah, something like 2.423, something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that, so it's
Yeah.
actually more, for what it's worth.
And you won't notice it anyhow.
Should
That's right.
wrap up ahead.
We should wrap up. Are there any other
There
questions?
is a
for
question
them?
about UEFI BIOS. If
UEFI
there's any progress,
BIOS.
because there are exclusive mainboards that do not have legacy
Correct.
support.
Okay, so let me talk very, very briefly about UEFI. Unified Extensible Firmware Interface. Is everyone here familiar with the term EFI or UEFI? Okay. We're all familiar with a traditional computer BIOS. Computer boots up, press F1, enter setup. OS2 needs that. What EFI, and now what UEFI, the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, does is it removes the BIOS from the picture. In other words, the system itself doesn't provide those services. They're provided by the operating system running on the machine. Unfortunately for OS 2, we don't have that. Call us crazy. 20 years ago, there wasn't even such a thought. So, modern machines that bridge the gap have what's called a compatibility support module, a CSM, which is a software component of UEFI, which emulates that BIOS so the system can boot up. In other words, you go into BIOS setup and you tell it UEFI mode, or I hate this word, legacy mode. In legacy mode, the compatibility support module is turned on, and the system will boot like any other traditional PC, and OS 2 is very happy. The newest machines do not ship with a compatibility support module. So they require a UEFI-aware operating system in order to run. Now, there are ways around that. There is a software compatibility support module, which essentially is a UEFI-aware operating system unto itself, which boots up and then allows you to boot whatever you need to boot after that. That is our ticket out. And that is the route that we will, in all probability, take to resolve the UEFI problem. We have not looked at it closely yet. Expect some functionality like that in ArcaOS 6, unless we need it sooner than that. I mean, really, that's what it is. So it's not as daunting a task as it once seemed it would be, but we haven't gotten there yet. Again, like the JFS thing, we have a system that works. We know that there is still hardware manufactured that does have a compatibility support module in the hardware. We're able to use it, so we haven't tackled that issue.
Not only that, we have interim workarounds. You got virtualization.
Yeah.
Not as good as running on raw hardware, but even with the UEFI, it gets very vague whether you're really running on the real hardware or not anyhow, once you stick a core boot module in there.
That's true. That's true.
Are you on hardware or are you not?
What's the definition of virtualization? I mean, what's the definition of bare metal? It gets really gray in between, where it used to be a very hard and fast line between booting a machine on bare metal and booting a machine underneath another operating system. But yeah, virtualization is another way out. ArcaNoe's position is that we want to provide a modern OS 2 that will run on bare metal and not have to be virtualized. If getting us on UEFI hardware requires that we use a core boot module to take the place of that CSM, then we'll deal with that. And if the performance is not up to snuff for us, then we'll look at solutions after that and change. Anything else? Anything else from the web?
No.
Good, good. If there are any other questions about ArcaOS, please feel free to go to the website. There's a contact page there. Someone actually does answer email that comes in through the contact page. We're very happy to answer questions and talk about ArcaOS. And honestly, the only reason that we're delaying our release is because we want to make sure we get it right. That's the only reason we're holding back. All right, we are over time. I am going to say thank you very much.
Yeah, all my ECS,
Yeah.
2 releases are running.
That's
on one
pretty nice.
machine.
That happened,
I want to make virtual.
RAM.
Add
I want to get
charge.
virtual.
Well, virtual.
Yeah, I want to get virtual.
My desktop